What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This is episode number 759. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and join me on the line all the way from Denver, Colorado. It's Luis Scott-Vargas. Luis, we're doing the Sunset Show for MH3 today. Like, how?
Yeah, that's the way the set schedule is kind of going at this point. Like next week, Bloomborough set reviews. That's what's coming, and it might seem fast, and it is, and they make a lot of sets. But MH3 was a fun set. I feel like we got a couple good meaty episodes out of it, and you know, the Sunset Show is gonna kind of put a bow on it, so we get ready for Bloomborough.
Yeah, I'm a little bummed. I feel like, at least for me, I have some unfinished business with MH3 because when the Vintage Cube came back up on Magic Online, I was drafting that and it went off, and I was like, all right, you know, I'm ready to go back and dive back into MH3, especially with the last episode that you and I had together about it, where you talked about black and some of the other archetypes that you liked. And I was pretty excited to try those out because I have to admit, got a little hung up in the kind of Eldrazi energy side of things. And I was kind of ready to because the issue with that being that you can draft one of those decks, some color combination of one of those decks basically every time if you want. And so I was kind of stuck in that type of situation, and I was kind of excited about exploring further. And then it just feels like, whoop, you know, never mind, got to shift our eyes forward to the next set coming out. And that does mean, though, that today we're going to say goodbye, kind of wherever we're at with the format, to Modern Horizons 3. And we've also got, wow, what a really cool event / announcement that came out yesterday as well, about Cube Draft that we'll talk about too. So first, though, we want to thank everybody who supports us on Patreon. It's patreon.com/limited resources if you'd like to do so. And it gives you access to our Patreon feed. You also get the show a little early. You get an unedited version of it, depending on what level you're at. Whatever level you're at, you can watch us record the show live, or you can watch the video of us recording the show live a little bit after the fact if you don't happen to be online right when we're recording, but you get access to that fun extra stuff too. So again, thank you so much for each and every person who supports us on there. We really appreciate it. The show's also brought to you by Ultimate Guard, the best in the business to protect your decks, your cards, your collection. You're going to find it at Ultimate Guard. You can go to ultimateguard.com to browse their products and always see the exciting new stuff they have coming out. And you can go to your favorite local game store or your favorite online retailer to purchase the stuff. And interestingly, our first little news segment here, Luis, is also related, as it turns out, to Ultimate Guard.
Yeah, so Ultimate Guard, kind of working with Daybreak, so you know, the company that runs Magic Online, as we all know, have this really cool kind of tournament series coming up where it culminates with a cube draft at Worlds, like at the World Championship in Las Vegas, where you not only keep what you draft, but you're also playing for basically the rest of the cards.
Yeah,
and this is a vintage cube, Black Lotus, Power 9, all that, Dual Lands, Bazaar, Mishra's Workshop, and all real cards.
Dude,
it's incredible.
It's like a dream, right? Because that's the thing that you always think when you're on Magic Online, or if you draft a cube with friends.
What if I could keep can I keep my pack? Like,
right.
You know?
It's anybody who first starts playing cube, they all have those same, you know, we all think, or some of us say those things all the time. But like, oh my God, they're actually going to do it. You know, like if you open up a pack with Lotus, you get to take it home, not just play against it. And as you said, the way the format's going to work is that the cards, so the players that draft get to keep the cards that they drafted. And then, but as many of you know, cubes normally will have more than just 8 15 card packs, right? They'll usually have extra cards so that not every draft means you don't always know that every single card was open in every single pack. I will say some cubes do that, but most don't. And the vintage cube that they're basing this off of, now they said that they're still putting in kind of the final design and stuff like that. But, a standard issue vintage cube, let's call it, usually has, 540 cards in there?
The typical number is 540, and 8 players will end up drafting 360 cards, or I think, of the 540.
Right.
So that ends up being 2/3 of the cube get open. So you will have plenty of good stuff left out of the unused cards, and they haven't, like you said, they haven't exactly said what the pricing breakdown is going to be, but you can keep all the cards you have, and you're playing for the rest. Obviously, just an incredible opportunity. It's such a cool thing.
Yeah, the way they put it on the article, which by the way I'll put in the show notes for anybody who wants to check it out. The 8 finalists will not only draft a physical vintage prize cube and keep all their picks, but all undrafted cards will be awarded to the finalists as well. So the whole cube is going to get distributed to these 8 players, with finalists having the lion's share of it. But the best part, like regardless of all the undrafted stuff and everything, is you get to sit down and you get to pick your cards and keep them. So, man, this is like something that I didn't think anybody would ever actually put together. Like, it's amazing.
You remember the one guy who tweeted at me, like both of us actually berating us for not streaming the Arena Open because, it was like our Super Bowl, that a couple of years ago. And
I remember that.
Got roundly mocked. Yeah. This is actually the Cube Super Bowl.
Yes.
Like this is actually that. And I think that everyone who loves Cube and loves competitive Cube is like extremely excited about this. It's going to be tough to qualify, as you can imagine. It's a 8-player draft with $65,000 or whatever in prizes, whatever the vintage Cube is worth. Mm-hmm. So what it's looking like now, though, again, they will, I think, be flexible as they see what works and what doesn't, is starting this Friday. So as of recording tomorrow, there's going to be Cube League opened up where if you 3-0, mm-hmm. you get a token, and you can use that to enter a 64-player event. There's going to be 8 of those per week, and those 8 64-player events, well, the winner of each of those gets to then play in the finals draft at the end of the week, and the winner of that draft goes to Worlds, or goes to Cube Worlds, as it were.
Yes, that's right.
So basically, you have to go 9-0 in the 64-player draft plus the draft of all the winners, mm-hmm. and to even play in that first one, you do have to 3-0 draft. Way easier than going 12-0 though, because that first set where you have to 3-0, you can just try as many times as you want, and they've even said that it's going to be 6-ticket entry, mm-hmm. so. Those feeder drafts are going to be pretty cheap. I will say, though, I would be willing to bet that the demand for this is just going to be outrageous, and it might change to having to go 4-0 or something like that for the first part of it to get that draft token.
Okay, interesting.
Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Okay. So, we'll see how these first couple of weeks go. But this whole thing is just awesome. Everyone is super stoked to play in it, and there's just like not that many opportunities to really cube for high stakes. I guess I'm one of the few people who's found such a thing.
Yes, you have.
I do have access to that.
you had to seek it out. Yeah.
Yes. And I think this is like, if you ever want to test your mettle, like I'd be willing to bet that the 8 people in that draft, I would be surprised if we didn't recognize 4 of those names as like well-known either pros or grinders or whatever, people who have played a lot of Magic and have played for a long time. Like it's like, this is going to be a very competitive thing. I know I'm going to try for it,
Yeah, for sure.
And BK is going to, Mac, all the guys I know who play a ton of cubes. So really cool thing. Props to Ultimate Guard. Like, this is the stuff that makes me so happy to work with them. Like, this is just so cool. Like, this is just cool. One of the coolest promotions I've seen. And Magic Online, obviously, big part of that too. So it's really cool seeing 2 of my favorite things working together on my other favorite thing, Cube. So like, it's all just great.
Yeah. And the names that they're using for those stages that Luis just described, they're calling them feeder leagues, the ones that the 6-ticket or 80 play point to enter that you have to get your 3 match wins in, and then 64-player draft. If you win that, then you get to get invited to the Vegas qualifier. And if you win one of those, then you've got your seat in what they're calling the Ultimate Guard finals. And it says, if you get 3 match wins, you get a finals invitation. So that's the big draft that you're trying to qualify for. Plus you get MagicCon travel and an avatar on Magic Online for it as well. And then there's, actually pretty sweet prizes for below that, but I think that anybody gets to that point is going to be very, very sad.
Oh, right. I kind of didn't mention it because it seemed like it was clear. Yes, the 8 people who qualify are getting flown to Vegas and like their mm-hmm. accommodation. Like, this is just it's kind of like being qualified for Worlds. It's just Cube Worlds instead of Magic Worlds.
Seriously, this feels like that. Yeah, and it does look like they're going to be broadcasting it as well.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
The final draft is going to be Rochester.
What?
Yeah, the top 8 draft. And so face up, if you have the Rochester draft.
Are you serious?
That means, well, this is just like, remember the beta draft in Vegas that I did?
Yeah.
That was Rochester too. When people are getting to take home Black Lotus and whatnot, like they're gonna want to get the most of a spectacle out of it as they can.
Yeah, because the way these drafts typically work from a coverage perspective is that one person is followed, and then occasionally they'll have a camera on a second. But it's really difficult. We've actually done it once, but it's very difficult to have cameras on all the players. So come on, if you're putting on an event like this and somebody does get the Black Lotus opened or whatever, you're like, you need to have that seen, right? Like it can't be like, oh yeah, seat 4 opened it, and then they show you after the fact. So that does make sense. But yeah, like I said, this will be on Twitch as well. And it'll be the same weekend as the MagicCon Vegas. Wow. That is super, super cool. As I mentioned, I put the link in the show notes I put a link to that article in the show notes so that if you're interested in checking it out, you can do so. Crack a pack, Luis?
Yeah, let's do a crack a pack.
Say goodbye. All right. Our first card out is Serum Visionary.
Oh, strong card. Solid. The best blue common. Mm-hmm. But I would hope to do better than that for pick one, pack one.
Sure. This card ended up being pretty good and even had some neat combos. A Cursed Marauder.
Oh, I really like a Cursed Marauder.
Me too.
I found this card to be just a really effective way for the black decks to face down the Eldrazi decks. So I liked having multiple Cursed Marauders in kind of all my black decks. Yeah, very, very good. Also, I have to admit, when I first saw it, I just thought like, okay, they played with the casting cost on one of these, Fleshbag Marauder type cards where like ETBs and we both sack creature. The non-token thing, huge, really big, really, really, really matters, especially in this set. But also the thing I didn't really realize about a Cursed Marauder is like, if you can start looping them, if you can recur them, if you can cast them multiple times a game, you can really create an imbalance where it doesn't hurt you that much, but you're just annihilating everything that your opponent's doing. And, if you have the right setup, you can even get little benefits for doing so each time. I mean, multiple Cursed Marauders and ways to bring them back is like a viable game plan if built around properly. It's a lot for just a random 2-mana common that kind of looked like a slightly cheaper version of a card we've seen before. So I'm impressed by that one. Nyxborn Hydra. Nyxborn Hydra was pretty good. I don't think it was a card I would want to take in the first couple of picks, but you do really want to have one of these. Like,
can steal a game.
It can definitely steal a game. It's got a lot. It's got synergy with tokens. It's got synergy with, or like counters or rather. It's got synergy with just having big creatures. When you have a 6/6 in play, then you can Nyxborn Hydra for like another 5. Like you can win the game really easily. Mm-hmm. Bestow is kind of naturally resilient to removal. Like that's overall, I would say that the Nyxborn Hydra is a card you should not cut from your green decks very often. And these are all solid cards. I just don't really want to take any of them.
Same. Solstice Zealot is going to fill that same exact description. Siege Smash. I never really found I had that much room for Siege Smash.
No, that's a card I've lost to a lot more than I've won with, just based on kind of how my games have played out. But
it's not because of power level. It's a decent power level card. It's just, where does it fit, right? It's like, what am I cutting for this like pretty solid, combat trip shatter? It's hard to find.
Also, how many aggro decks were out there that were like, I'm going to curve out and attack you with like a ground creature that needs this? Because there were aggro decks, but they were one of the best parts about this, like most of the master sets or all the master sets, is how much synergy matters. There's not a really typical like, I just curve out, I don't care what my drops are, aggro deck. There's like energy, which has energy synergies. There's the artifact deck, which is actually kind of grindy. I wouldn't even call it an aggressive deck. Maybe it drains you out with tokens and Dross Claws and Marionette Masters. There's white-green counters, which, when they go Watchdog into 3-drop in an Area Auxiliary, it feels like a curve-out deck because that's what they're doing. But they're also trying to take advantage of synergies, and Siege Smash doesn't fit into very many of these buckets.
Kind of none of them. Drownyard Lurker.
another totally fine card. Like Jeff found us the average the average pack, where these are all cards where like fifth or sixth pick, if I see one of these and I'm drafting the deck that wants them, like I'm like, okay, yeah, this works for me. But I'm not slamming I think any of these in the first couple picks, or at least I hope not.
Yeah, same. Expanding Ooze is our last common.
Another playable but not exciting card for sure.
Yeah, but as is typical, we would hope to pick up something at the higher rarities anyway. Our first uncommon is Victimize.
I do like Victimize. It's really good with a Cursed Marauders, that same style of deck. Mm-hmm. It leads into nicely into like black green or black white kind of grindy stuff. Mm-hmm. Sometimes black red, but I like Victimize specifically more in those other colors. I would first pick it over the commons we've seen, I think, but I would like, again, hope not to be first picking this.
Yeah, same. Urza's Cave. Not found that one to be.
No, that's just not a particularly good card.
Legion Leadership. That's the red-white duel that doubles target creature's power and gives it first strike.
This one's pretty good. The fact that it's a red-white duel and like a castable spell is pretty strong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good versatility.
I've lost to this card, one with this card being cast. I've played it a lot as a land. I've played it as a land way more than I've cast it. I would probably take Legion Leadership. It's a very flexible card. You can play it in a lot of different decks.
Same vein here, Suppression Ray, the blue-white version of this, the one that taps down X creatures.
Yeah, this one's also fine. They're comparable. I think I would rather have Legion Leadership. I think red-white is a better color combination. They're very close because they're both energy colors, but red-white is like an aggro deck that I think can more use the ability to have a good mana, and then Legion Leadership I think is a more castable spell. So okay. I would do that.
Both interestingly can kind of steal a game here or there, or change. They both actually have quite a big impact if you can cast them at the right time. Suppression Ray could be the type of game that it's like, oh, never mind, the game ended. Our rares, we do have two. One of them is Wooded Foothills.
Okay.
Nice for the binder. The other one is Kirik, son of Yawgmoth. I lost to that card once total in the whole format, and I saw it, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 times on the other side, and just, it was horrible. Except for that one time that I got housed by it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a card that I think doesn't really do a whole lot, but it has its moments. I would take Legion Leadership here and be, I think, kind of unhappy about the whole thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, thanks, Jeff. Wow, what a pack to end us.
I mean,
on.
You could there's like a legit argument for Wooded Foothills because
Jeff's giving us the thumbs up on Skype.
Yeah,
he's proud of this one.
They're both dual lands. Wooded Foothills is untapped. Yeah, maybe you just take Wooded Foothills here. The fact that it's not a spell is kind of rough. I'd probably take Legion Leadership still.
I would too. It has to be better. I mean, the fetch lands in the set were there to fill out binders, but they didn't really fit the. I mean, there was just better versions of them at common, for this particular set. Okay, let's get into it, Luis. Lot to talk about with MH3, especially given that it does feel somewhat fresh, having been released relatively recently. If you could summarize the set, what would it be?
Eldrazi versus the world is kind of how I felt about the set. That was certainly my approach to drafting it.
Mm-hmm. So in your mind, this set kind of broke down into, am I drafting an Eldrazi deck? And if not, then it's all this other stuff that's trying to keep up.
Yeah, basically, it's kind of like I described on the show, though, when we were talking about it. I go into every draft thinking like, okay, if Eldrazi's open or even somewhat open, that's a good place to be. If not, figure out what else you want to do. And I think that the Eldrazi decks were that good, and they were certainly the headliner of the format, if nothing else.
Yeah, my one sentence summary was you can pick any archetype you want as long as it's Eldrazi or energy.
Yeah, I don't quite agree with that because I think that.
What's your take?
I think that I agree with you can any deck you want as long as it's Eldrazi, in the sense that Eldrazi is by far the best deck, and there's multiple Eldrazi drafters at the table. Energy, after the first week or two, I did notice I was drafting energy a little less. It has to be fairly open. It's not like Eldrazi. Like Eldrazi can be cut off and you can still have a great Eldrazi deck. You pick, if I open on Chrysalis into Malevolent Rumble, you're just not moving me off Eldrazi unless like something really wild happens, a fifth pick, either Revolt or something. So I guess overall I would say that it's Eldrazi is the first place you go, but it's not the only thing going on. And energy is one of the good decks, but there's a lot you can do in this set. I think this set has some cool stuff going on.
Yeah, I think the reason I said that is because I agree everything you said about Eldrazi, checkmark that. But with the energy stuff, those are the two decks that were the most obvious. And I felt like they were the most supported by a lot, right? I agree that there are other decks that you can find and you can piece together. And part of the appeal of this format is that those were not obvious on day one, where these two were. These present themselves very in your face, right? It's like if you just draft cards that all have the word Eldrazi or all have the word energy on it and you can cast them, you're probably not that bad a shape, which is a very blunt way to look at it. And so, these were the ones that they really backed up and supported. And the rest, really, they made us work for it, right? Even the stuff that looked like it might be more straightforward or more supported ended up to me being like a stretch. Like you had to really kind of get into the weeds of the format to understand them. But again, I do think that that's a good thing about the format. And frankly, I think it's what saved the format, because my one sentence summary is a little bit more week 2, week 1 level summary, where I think what you said is a more nuanced take that thankfully is true, as we went into week 3, week 4, week 5 with the format. What did end up being the best archetypes? We mentioned Eldrazi and energy.
Eldrazi, energy. I think there was a bunch of different good black decks, like black as a color, had a bunch of different decks in it. Like red, black artifacts, green, black graveyard stuff. White, black had like a combination of +1/+1 counters, sometimes recursion graveyard. Like it was all kind of similar. And then white, green had +1/+1 counters. And I got to say, this is the first set where the +1/+1 counters theme, which they've tried to do in probably a half dozen sets, actually worked out well. They just printed cards that were good. So it actually was a success.
Do you have white, red as an energy deck? Is that fall into that category?
I don't think energy is a little bit like drafting black, where there's different kinds of energy decks. And a white red aggro energy deck and a Jeskai control energy deck are going to be somewhat different and want different things even among the same colors. But I really haven't seen a white red deck that didn't have a at least somewhat significant energy theme. It's just kind of hard to have all those cards in there without doing that. So
no, I agree. Yeah, it's just I wanted to call that one out because it's one archetype that I have had a lot of success with. Like when I've had a decent version of it, I felt really confident about it. But I didn't know we had already said energy and energy and Eldrazi both cover 3 colors and can be kind of different versions. So what cards were we most wrong about during the set reviews? Which cards really surprised us one way or the other? Man, the one you put up at first is just unbelievable to me, especially after playing it in Cube.
Yeah, Malevolent Rumble is just one of the most pushed cards in the set. Like, it got overshadowed pretty hard by Writhing Chrysalis, but Malevolent Rumble is a constructed level card. It's a play at the Modern Pro Tour and like Nadu decks and other kinds of decks, like some Eldrazi decks had it. We've both played it a bunch in Vintage Cube by now, and it just completely hangs. It's far from the worst green card in Vintage Cube. There's probably 10 cards, 15 cards that are worse.
Totally.
Like, It just turns out if you combine Impulse plus Lotus Petal in the same card, like that's pretty good.
Yeah.
All the cards go to the graveyard. Like you get a creature that you can use. Like it. So we weren't even down in Malevolent Rumble, but we did not realize this card is just off the charts good.
No, it wasn't until you described it that way to me, where you're like, how about Impulse plus Lotus Petal? And I'm like, okay, I see where he's going with this. Like I'm thinking, is he being hyperbolic? But it's like, not really. Like it does play like that. And also, it really makes you recognize the value of the Eldrazi spawn tokens being a thing, a creature on the board, right? Like that is such a huge deal in these other formats where you can get a block or an attack or some weird thing that you didn't think about. And then of course, the mana aspect is important too. Yeah. Malevolent Rumble. definitely missed that. I mean, we didn't give it a bad grade like you said, but I did not recognize how really strong it was. What about Gift of the Viper?
This card also like skyrocketed in my estimation. And I mean, this is part of why it's nice to discuss things, whether it be your PT testing team or your draft Discord or whatever. Some of the guys really were like, hey, this card's great. I play like 2 of these in every time I have 2, and it's always been good. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I got beaten by it in a house draft by Matt Costa. And I was like, oh, wow, this card's actually doing a lot better than I thought. And I played it at the PT. I took it like 7th pick or whatever, put it in my deck at the PT, won me 2 games. Like, I think that Gift of the Viper, again, it's not that I think we thought Gift of the Viper was bad, but we didn't think it was like particularly good. And it turns out it is, I think, quite good. Like, I think it's a card that you should definitely be interested in playing and just put in your deck basically every time you're green.
What about Temperamental Oozewag?
Another one. Green had these like deceptive cards. Like Oozewag looks like kind of replacement level 4-mana creature, especially compared to Writhing Chrysalis, but it's just not. Oozewag is like, it attacks as a 6/6 a lot of the time.
With trample. It's just
It gives a bunch of your other stuff trample. Yeah. It has combos with counters. Like it's just a fantastic card. And I think that we were not as, we were basically not as high in any of these cards as we should have been.
Yeah. When I look at it, it's modified creatures you control have trample. That looked like minor bonus upon set review reading. It looked like, okay, we're getting a bunch of power and toughness. We're getting some +1/+1 counters if that matters. Cool. Right. And then it's like, we'll throw in this thing with trample. That's nice. That's we're happy to have it. It can be a total game changer. It just sits there and does that. Like, so if you're doing +1/+1 counter sub theme or any modification theme and you just play the Temperamental Oozewag, all of a sudden all your opponent's blocks suck, because that's what these decks are good at. They're making big creatures. They're putting counters on their stuff. And there's a huge element in this format of chump blocking. Like, just being able to absorb 6 damage with an Eldrazi spawn is a big game. And this thing just says no. Like, all the power and toughness I throw at you is going to come across one way or the other. And it really mattered. It just matters way more than you think it would. To me, it looked like, it's a little strong to say throwaway text, but it just looked like a minor addition, and it ended up not being so.
Yeah. I think that the number of games I've had where the last spell I cast was Oozewag is pretty high, where I'm just like, Oozewag attack with my 9/9 Watchdog, Oozewag attack with my Writhing Chrysalis. And it's just like, yep, that totally is what that does.
Oozewags and Chrysalises hang out. We haven't mentioned that one yet. We will, don't worry.
Yeah, plenty about that.
Yeah. What were some of the underrated cards that we found?
I think Essence Reliquary, no one ever really cracked that nut. I kind of feel like, like I drafted that card a fair amount and was pretty happy with it, but it was not the win rate and the play rate on that card were both remain pretty low. I guess I haven't checked in the last 2 weeks. I think it was a good card, is a good card if you know how to what to do with it. It's just obviously it's not the easiest card to use, and there's a lot of ways to play it that aren't very good.
What about utter insignificance?
But I guess before we move off Essence Reliquary, like some of my favorite combos, a Cursed Marauder, if you have no creatures in play, because remember it's not sorcery speed, it's just on your turn. Yeah. You go a Cursed Marauder, bounce it in response, they sack a creature. So you're just every turn 2 mana, they sack a creature. That's it.
And they're not keeping up with that in the long term for sure. No,
bouncing your own energy stuff or your Serum Visionaries, bouncing Refurbished Familiar is a really nice one because the Essence Reliquary is an artifact, so you're getting a discount. Like there's a lot you can do here.
Definitely. This is the type of card that can transform like a mid-range strategy into like an unbeatable engine in the late game. That's a lot for one card to do.
Yeah. Utter Insignificance. So this is the flash enchantment that makes their creature a 1/1, and you can pay 2 and a colorless to exile it. This did a really good job of giving Eldrazi decks a little bit of removal, and critically, you could Malevolent Rumble into it and get it back with Evolution Witness. So I ended up playing a lot of this card kind of at the end of the format. Well, I guess the format's not over, but by the way, there's an arena open this weekend of MH3. So really? we got more MH3 to jam here. Don't worry.
Okay, sweet. So I actually have I'm jamming then. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, I was drafting last night. It's great.
Yeah.
So I think that Utter Insignificance ended up being like a good removal spell for Eldrazi decks, and just a card you could get very, very cheaply. Like I really like when I can pick up my removal spell 10th pick and not have to have to basically pay for it.
Which you definitely could. What about Drossclaw? I remember you talked about this.
This is still
one.
underrated. So this is the, 1 and a black for a living weapon. It gives +1/+1, so you get the germs, you get a 1/1, and whenever the equipped creature attacks, they lose a life. Won a lot of games off like Drossclaw, attack. They take 1, they block, the creature just dies. I'm chump attacking. They take another 1 off my Marionette Apprentice. Okay, next turn, equip Drawclaw to something else. It makes your refurbished familiars cheaper. You can sack either half to Eviscerator's Insight. Like, there's just a lot going on that Drawclaw does well for the decks that just want material and chip damage. It's just kind of the perfect combination. And I did not cut very many Drawclaws from my decks, and I frequently got them very, very late. So
yeah,
pure
synergy card, right? I mean, it just supports many of the things that color's trying to do.
I mean, I'll get deeper into it when we talk about the mechanics and themes overall, but synergy is just such a huge part of this draft format, and I think that's really awesome. That's something I really enjoy.
Same, that's a bonus for sure. And then a Cursed Marauder, seriously, especially at the beginning of the format. I mean, and I'm admitting to it myself, having underrated it or undervalued it. Not only are you getting quite a bit for your 2 mana, it also matches up well against your worst matchups, and it does have those synergies I talked about earlier with looping it. You mentioned it with the Essence Reliquary, but buying it back or doing any of that type of stuff. There's a pattern. Like the 3rd time an Accursed Marauder hits the battlefield, whether it's the same 1 or 2, and then you bought 1 back or whatever, it gets really difficult to win on the other side at some point, and usually you're also getting that chip damage, like you said, in there too from Marionette or whatever.
Yeah, Cursed Marauder is just great. Can't say enough good things about a Cursed Marauder.
Is it going to see play in like outside of this format? Like, is it a thing? It just seems like for 2 mana, there's something you could put together with it, but. Cute?
Yeah, I think that a Cursed Marauder is borderline. I wouldn't be surprised if it showed up here and there, but I don't think it's a card that is necessary. Is like on the face of it looks like the best card for Constructed. I'm trying it in Cube right now, and it's been okay. It's good with Luris.
What were the most controversial cards? I have to ask, is this where we talk about Writhing Chrysalis? I'd say it wasn't really controversial, but it could, like everybody kind of agreed, but it also generated a heck of a lot of conversation, and that kind of fits into this category.
Yeah, I mean, I think controversial doesn't just have to mean like, do we disagree on power level? Because no one disagreed on the power level of Writhing Chrysalis. But I do think that it is controversial in that like Writhing Chrysalis is probably the biggest like mark against the format. Like just the existence of this card, like would MH3 be better if you deleted Writhing Chrysalis? And I think so. Like I don't think it's the presence makes the format better. It unbelievably pushed. I remember when we did our limited meeting, I described how we had this pile of cards that were better than Writhing Chrysalis. It was just not very many cards.
God, it's so wild. I mean, you guys set different goalposts on your limited meeting because of this thing.
I mean, this thing, it's dropped to 8 in game and hands win rate. So it used to be like 3.
It was 3 for a long time.
But we're still talking about the same percentage, 63.9%, which is just like so ludicrously high for a common.
Yeah. I mean, so, big picture wise, like this is the best common we've reviewed, right?
certainly. And, I mean, you can make an argument
at it for 10, 11 years together, you and I.
Yeah. I mean, I've drafted Magic for an unbelievably long time, and basically, unless like you could make the argument that Writhing Chrysalis is the best common of the last like 20 years.
Yeah.
And you could probably make an argument for like 25 years, maybe, or maybe like 23 years. Basically, Urza Saga with like Pestilence and Rolling Thunder and Tempest were like, if we got to have the 17 lands data, well, probably called 15 lands back then. No one knew how to even build decks. But
we should make that website with a bunch of fake data about like, Mirage or something.
But if you were to look back then, I would say maybe Pestilence and Rolling Thunder are like two of the only cards that have comparable like win rates are and probably still higher than Chrysalis. But even like something like Sprout Swarm, I don't know. I mean, that card kind of ruined Time Spiral Block to a degree, but Writhing Chrysalis might just be a better card. You might win more games if you just have a Chrysalis in your deck.
It's also wild because this is not a normal set. This is a push set.
Powerful set.
Yeah, powerful gold cards, even a sort of a sixth color with colorless. This is a set where they really let their hair down and say, hey, we're going to make some pushed, powerful stuff that could, make a major impact on Modern. And remember, Modern has been out for over a decade. It is a deep, powerful format with a lot of options at this point. So we're not talking about, minor bumps on utility stuff. We're talking about cards that can come in and, be game changers for decks or even create them. And that's what they're going for. Like that's the aim, one of the aims of these type of sets. And somehow we have a common sitting here in the top 10 fighting with all of those pushed crazy cards, even the rares and mythic rares where they really, really, really let it go. I mean, this to me, this is easily the most memorable thing about it. In 5 years, if you go, oh yeah, I remember MH3, which one was that? Writhing Chrysalis. Oh, right.
Totally.
Yeah. And it's just like that. I don't want to make this like a bash fest, but how the heck did this card get through? It is weird that it came through at common like this.
I mean, I think this format is quite good despite Writhing Chrysalis, but I'm still pretty confused how Writhing Chrysalis saw print the way it does. Like, look, I know it's hard to test draft and test and test limited in general. Like, you have to like print out all the paper cards when you're proxying them. Wizards, like cards change, all that stuff. But like the rate on this card is so absurd that it's like kind of hard for me to imagine. Like, was this card cast? How many times was this card in this form cast? Because I don't know what the percentage is, but if you were to look at cards that ended up being way too good or, like problematic, how many of them got changed very close to when they were locked? Right.
Big chunk.
I mean, that was like the classic example is Skull Clamp. They like, they changed it last minute to +1, -1 as a drawback, not even thinking for more than 5 minutes about it and clearly never putting it in a deck. And they made one of the most broken cards that's ever existed. Like, was Writhing Chrysalis different? I mean, Arya from Play Design posted a thread where it was at one point like mono green or whatever, and like it changed a few times. I wonder if it had some late changes, because it's just really surprising to me that they looked at the current stats and costs and everything it does and thought, yeah, this makes sense to print like this. This isn't too much.
And I mentioned it a while back when we first
just not good design to come to that conclusion,
And it's a strange one to have it get out of hand just because there are so many knobs to turn on a card like this, right?
It's way better than the red-green uncommon Titans Vanguard, which is also a great card,
which is
that
awesome.
Card's fantastic.
Totally.
But you don't usually want the gold common to be much better than the gold uncommon of the same colors. That's kind of weird.
Right. And just, when you look at it, you've got the normal stuff like casting cost and power and toughness that you can make adjustments on, which they didn't, or maybe they did, but those didn't get changed to make it a little bit more fair. But then, you have the extra stuff. So like, how many Eldrazi spawn is it making? Right. It's like, well, your options here were probably 0 or 1, right? And somehow it ended up at 2. And then it's like, it has reach. Just like that looks like a throw on. I don't know why. And then the other part's interesting, right? Whenever you sack an Eldrazi, it gets a counter. Okay, that's what this thing is supposed to be doing. But wow, a lot of built-in action there.
I mean, I don't think I would change that. I don't get a counter ability, because like that is kind of core to the card. Just make a new card if you're going to do that. Like it just wouldn't be the same card. And I don't think I would stop it from making two tokens, because I think that's like a really cool part of the card. But this could have been, instead of being a 2/3, could have been a 1/2, could have not had reach. The reach is actually kind of egregious too.
It is,
because the reach means that when you play this, you just can't die to anything.
Right.
So
totally,
that it's just like a huge beating. But at the end of the day, Writhing Chrysalis couldn't take the format down by itself. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on. It just wasn't a good part of the format, because some percentage of games your opponent just goes Malevolent Rumble into Writhing Chrysalis, or just turn 4 Chrysalis, turn 5 Chrysalis, and it's just like, okay,
yes,
that's
totally.
That's cool, I guess, you know.
And was it a sealed that you did recently or something where the first thing you did is just like, how many Chrysalis did I get?
Yeah, I won a box because I was like, oh, I opened 2 Chrysalis. Let's just build that, you know?
Yeah, I remember the first, normally we look for our rares. I mean, on Arena, it puts them in front of you, but you were just like running over to see how many Chrysalis you got, and it's a freaking common. It's like, okay, yeah. So that to me did leave a stamp, but interestingly, there was enough wiggle room in the set for us to adapt to it. And it's still amazing. I mean, there was 100,000 of them seen, on 17 lands, and that's over double the second place. It's just a completely absurd sample size to have for a card like that, and still almost 64% game in hand. So that was definitely the most controversial card of the set, and it generated the most talk. What other stuff stood out to you, though?
There were some weirdo rares. Shadow of the Second Sun, like draw, you get a new beginning phase at the end of each of your turns. Like, the card ended up being quite good, but it was like, oh, how do you use this? This is kind of a weird card. Quest for the Necropolis is another weird one too.
That reminds me, I might need to change my what's the card that when they play it, I still have to read it every time. Shadow of the Second Sun's kind of a hard lock for that. It's still just like, I honestly can still read it and not know what it does. I know what it does because you told me, but I can read it and not be able to put those words together.
That's because this intersects with one of my, like, the part of Magic that grinds my gears the most is like, it's not insanely complicated what they're trying to do, but the wording of this card of like, at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, there's just all these multi-layered triggers. And again, like, I'm not claiming I have a better way to write this card. The way they wrote it is not good. It just does not really communicate what's going on very well instead. And this is why I like working on digital card games. You just write the thing that like sounds like plain English, and then it kind of works that way.
And then it does it in the game. Yeah.
Yes, there's an adjudicator there that just does it for you. And
exactly.
Magic doesn't have that luxury, so I agree it has to spell things out. It is just kind of rough reading some of these texts.
Yeah, especially when they want to go deep like that. Any other controversial ones?
Yeah, I think Quest for the Necropolis was one that, like, it's not very good overall, but it has some good moments, and I think it's like a kind of card it was interesting to talk about at least.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting one too. What was your favorite artwork in the set?
Oh, I love the Psychic Frog by one of the OGs, actually, Pete Venters, a longtime Magic artist.
Wow. Yeah, Psychic Frog. By the way, that card's nice in Cube. Man, I have been, just moved up and up. Every time somebody plays it against me, I'm like, oh no, I can't do anything about this stupid frog.
Yeah, no, Psychic Frog is fantastic.
Awesome card and really memorable artwork too. My favorite artwork was from Ether Spike. Which is by Campbell White.
Ether Spike has really good, that like digitalized kind of like,
exactly,
aura around the thing.
That's
I actually really like Ether Spike's artwork as well.
Yeah, really nice job. Because I have to say, if I'm a Magic artist and they're like, okay, it's a counterspell, right? It's like, okay, this has been done a lot, and it's just got to be difficult to kind of come up with something visually interesting. And I thought Campbell did a really good job with that. What were the best build around cards in the set? I know my favorite.
Chthonian Nightmare, big one. You could loop, like you said, a Cursed Marauders. You could loop lots of things. There's a lot of ways to get value out of this card. It was a cool energy card, like the only black energy card. So you would like splash black in an energy deck, or just play like a deck that had no other energy cards because it kind of self-fuels. It just did a lot of cool stuff. I think that the Chthonian Nightmare was a really fun card to build around. Ether Revolt, obviously, just like a headliner.
That's my favorite. Yeah.
If you just grab that card, you just grab every card that says energy, you'll just win really easily. It's a really, really good card.
It was super powerful. I remember the first time I played it, I was like, well, let's see if this works. Right. And I did exactly what you just said. I just had all energy stuff. And then I kept reading it. I'm like, wait, like I just get that no matter what. And then sometimes I get to do 2 extra. Like it was, the game did not last long. You have Crabomination on here.
So Crabomination is an interesting one. I want to talk about it not because it's a build around in the sense that you need to build around Crabomination in order for it to work. You can put this in any deck and it's just really, really good. the reason I have Crabomination here is because you could also build around it, and it would be really good if you did. Because when you build around Crabomination, you can end up in a spot where you just have a deck with Victimize and Grave Dig and just all the ways to recur it, and you just have Essence Reliquary have gone off with. You end up with a deck that feels like it really is, right? You just end up with a deck that just feels like the Crabomination show, and that's one of my favorite ways to approach this format. I don't know that I like 30 Nightmare might be my favorite pick one because I just really love building around that card, but Crabomination's in my top couple where it's just like, oh yeah, I first picked Crabomination. I just know I'm going to be like black, green or white, black, just grind them out and cast this card, get the trigger as many times as I can.
Totally.
It's the second Crabomination trigger breaks them. The first one, they're not going to win because you just don't beat the card very often when it gets cast. The second one is this game over.
Yeah, it's the type of card that when you pick it, you say game plan acquired, right? Like this is what I'm doing now. Like the rest of my picks will have this at least somewhat in mind for it. And then I also, for build arounds, I know that maybe they're a little played out because they're already very strong and then they go into the best archetype. But cards like Path of Annihilation and Kozilek's Unsealing, were very good build arounds as well that had you would throw them into your Eldrazi decks and all of a sudden they were even better somehow than they were prior. Man, you really nailed it with this one. Which card is still good when you read it, but it just doesn't see play?
Oh, for me, like I think Copy Crook is just like
totally
a clone that could clone both sides. Sounds good, and
it sounds amazing in an overpowered set, right?
And it even has the Connive. But it turned out all the big creatures had cast triggers, so copying the Eldrazi just wasn't that effective, and that's a pretty big downside. Like that does end up putting you in a spot where you're just not going to play the card very often.
It's true. It's weird because until you make that realization, you're like pumped about the Eldrazi thing, right? You're like, well, they're going to dump like 4 Eldrazi spawn and all their mana into this big 7 drop or 8 drop, and I'm going to spend 4 mana and copy it. And it's like, yeah, but then they got to do something and you didn't, and you're kind of even money otherwise. Yeah, that was a great choice there. What was was this a Prince or a Pauper set?
This is the most Pauper set that I can remember. You can just have 2 Chrysalis in your deck and you don't care what's in their deck. You're just going to beat them.
Also, I have to say, the rares, like the big flashy rares, not really for us, right? Like many of them felt aimed at multiplayer or at Modern itself or something like that. And it was like, oh, I got a sweet, red-green card. What does it do? Oh, it cares about X spells. Okay, well, I'm not going to do that, and then you go down the line and it's like kind of a surprising number of them were just throwaways for us.
Yeah. I mean, a complaint that Sam Pardee has had a bunch is how many rares in the set are just not designed for limited play? Like the medallions.
Yes.
There's like GOT the tree that like literally does not function because it says the number of times you've cast your commander.
Right.
There's just a bunch of cards in the set that are just not designed for the set at all. And they've been using the rare slot more. Like remember Dominaria United was pretty high on this. They had like a cycle of lords with no support at rare.
Yes.
Yes, they're printing cards for more things than just limited. We're not the only thing that matters, even though we should be because limited is the best.
Right.
But when the proportion gets high enough that like you notice it, Marshall, that's when I think it's a good chance it's too high because you basically don't read into these things or you're not really like trying to figure it out. You're just noticing,
assume it's not for me. Yeah.
This seems like it's happened a lot. And then you're just like, oh yeah, it had happened a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking at the mythic rares and I sorted them by worst to best, just to see some of the ones that like nobody's playing. And yeah, it's what you're saying, there's GOT down here. Like another one is a perfect example, Kalia of the Vast, right? That is a sweet, powerful, cool card that is just utterly unsupported in this format, and just nobody's played it at all, right? Necrodominance, Ulalek, didn't get there. Aslask, Omo, Queen of Vesuva. Like these are ones that you read them, Koram the Undertaker, and you can see how they could be sweet, but they're just not here.
So Omo is the 3 mana 1/5, and it makes a land, all land types, right? And I remember BK drafting it and being like, okay, yeah, like this looks pretty good. And I'm like, no, it's really bad. When it dies, the land stops tapping for all colors of mana.
Yeah.
The ability only works when Omo's in play. So it doesn't even do that. Like, it's just like,
yeah. And
it's crazy. I don't know.
It's just wild to me. Yeah. And I get it. I know that we have to make some concessions for these type of sets because, we're honestly the concession, right? Like these are made to get these types of cards into players' hands. And, I think that Wizards of the Coast says, well, why don't we just make it a sweet draft format while we're in here? Right. Cause like there's no downside to doing that really outside of, putting some extra effort in, but we're going to put out the set either way. So, I get it that like, this isn't like, we're going to make a limited set. That's not the first idea behind a Modern Horizons type set. But at the same time, I do feel like, as a note, it did feel like there were too many. I agree with Sam Pardee, especially when you start hitting cycles, like the medallions and stuff. It's just like, those are big chunks of rares and mythic rares that are just being kind of evaporated. And this one, definitely you could feel it. But it did mean it was an extraordinarily pauper set, as you said.
Definitely.
What's the it's a bad card, but I love it anyway winner for you?
For me, it's the Necrobloom, which I've used a bunch of times to good effect. Like, I feel like I've gotten some good action out of the Necrobloom, but I'm not going to defend how good the card is. Like, it's pretty difficult to cast. And honestly, you don't get the 2/2 part of the card very often. I mostly have used it as just a fuel for sack outlets like Chthonian Nightmare or what have you.
Tamiyo meets the Story Circle.
Oh, I like that one. That's a great answer. I like that one
too. Like, just let me play my slow everything down. Like we'll catch up on cards later. Card, right? Like, just leave me alone. But I disappointingly looked it up today. I actually play it. I'll play one of these in a blue deck, and it's got a 49.1% games in hand win rate, which puts it a good 6% below the break even curve. This card is real bad, and I love it anyway.
One of the coolest things I ever saw with it was at our PT testing house where I don't remember who it was who did this. I think it was Sam, actually, Sam Pardee. He went turn 2, Tamiyo's Meets the Story Circle. Turn 3, make a bunch of clues, play a turn 3 Kappa Cannoneer.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, he didn't win, so like it really doesn't speak well of the cards. But like that was pretty
killed
cool.
A turn 3 Kappa Cannoneer? Did they Curse Marauder it?
I don't know what happened from there. I just remember him complaining, like, I actually did the thing and it still didn't work. So that is a funny.
That's bad. Yeah, I think the best combo I had with it was I had it and Ether Revolt, so I could get I could trigger that.
You could get Revolt at any point.
Right. Wow. So it was just always doing extra. What's the I literally never win with it, but it always seems to beat me card for you?
Very clear for me. It's Siege Smash, which has to be like really obvious because it's the kind of card that when it gets cast, it can be really good. Obviously, it's a +3/+2 trample split second. But I also never put the card in my deck, so it's a high leverage card that I never play. And that's the sort of thing that will beat you. That
would also be my official answer if you hadn't said it. But I wanted to come up with something else. And one card, honestly. Saying that this always seems to beat me isn't really true, but I have lost to it what feels like a lot of times, which is Shrieking Drake. Where
like as a part of a combo or something?
Exactly. Like somebody, like I feel like when I play it, my best case is like I just get to buy back some minor ETB or something like that. And I paid way too much for that.
Petrifying Metal or come back and tap something else.
Right, exactly. Oh, I got 2 more energy, wow. And then when my opponent plays it, I'm like, wait, why are they and I look at the board and I'm like, oh my God. And they're going to do some just broken, stupid, absurd thing where it always lines up. And I always seem to get like incremental value out of it. What was my opponent played this, so now I must win or quit Magic Forever card?
Charitable Levy. To make
Which one is that? Is that the white card? Oh,
It's the Thalia one that after 3 times they get a card, no planes. I played against it twice now. I did win both times, but it was just like, oh my God. Like
you really? Knew your career was on the line?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I put any medallion. I don't know if that ever happened to you, but I did actually have somebody play a medallion against me once. And I was like, all right, buckle up. Like, I can't, and they weren't monocolor deck either. So What was the biggest groan test? What was the overall?
One of the medallions I think is playable, by the way.
Oh, which one is it?
Do you have a guess?
I don't know. Green.
When
I
say it, it's going to be kind of clear.
No,
which did you say?
I said green or blue, just like one of the expensive things or something.
No, jet medallion, because it's an artifact. So you can play it in the black-red deck. You can also sack it to like Eviscerator's Insight and stuff. I've actually found it to be pretty good.
That makes sense. Having to be a relevant card type for one of the archetypes. That's interesting. Yeah. Okay. All right. I don't remember if anybody played that against me. It might have been. Maybe I mischaracterized my poor opponent. They actually were onto something with it. This is a funny one. What was the biggest groan test? And there's two, and they're like, well, A, one's a common, one's an uncommon, and B, these are like home run groan tests, right? Like these are like all-time Hall of Fame groan tests. First one, the common, Writhing Chrysalis. I mean, is there any, you can hear groans coming through your computer screen when you played a Writhing Chrysalis on turn 3 or turn 4 against your opponent.
I mean, sometimes you just have these games. It's like, oh, it's going to be one of those games. Mm-hmm. Settle in, because there have been arena formats where it's like, okay, I've got a couple minutes. I'm gonna hop in and play a game. This is not one of the formats that I feel like has quite that ease of use, because you will just play and someone's going to play a Chrysalis, then the other person plays a Chrysalis, and it's just like, yeah, we're both going to be here for a bit,
Definitely, definitely. And I mean, the true biggest groan test is the second Chrysalis from a player. Like that's the one where it's like, come on, like what am I supposed to do here? And they have this huge board and these massive creatures, and maybe you could kill one of them, but it just gets ugly. And then honestly, again, just an absolute top tier Hall of Fame groan test winner here. This type of card is exactly why we have this category on the Sunset shows, and it's Scurry of Gremlins.
Scurry of Gremlins is like the number one card of, I don't know how I can lose this game, into dying that turn.
Dead.
In my final game of the Widow Box I played, I actually was up. I was like so far ahead, and I like attacked them down really low past the turn, and they played Scurry and get me to 2. Like they couldn't kill me. But
wow, that's already a miracle.
When they played the Scurry, I'm like, oh my god, I should not have attacked with them. Like I was way too aggressive here. What was I doing? Like, because I could just tell,
when somebody plays Scurry of Goblins or Gremlins, and the games, even if it was pretty out of hand for them, it's kind of like that gut check moment, in your life where you're like, maybe you drive by a police officer going a little too fast, and you got to stiffen up and go, I should not have done that. Like I really should not have done it. And this is the one that really checks you.
It's like when you, I don't know, make like a slightly risky move when you're driving, but you don't get punished. Exactly like you said, like there's a police officer there, you almost get clipped, and you kind of pull over for a second, and you're just like, okay, let's we got away with it this time. Let's not chance it,
Exactly. Let's breathe. Let's take a bigger picture approach to these decisions going forward. And I have to tell, the first time I played this format was when I was at Wizards and I did that video for them, and I played against Mike Turian, and I had like 2 Wumpuses on the board. I had attacked for like 11 the turn prior, and he had a couple of random Dirtles on the board, and all of a sudden he played something that made energy that was also a creature, and then also Scurry of Gremlins in the same turn, and he like 35'd me. Like that's how I started the format, and I was like, wow, like I did not think I was going to lose that game at all. Like I felt robbed, and that's what the groan test is for. What was the most frustrating bad card to lose to, or maybe one that you won't miss playing against, or just annoyed you?
For me, it was kind of a funny answer. It's a Thriving Skyclaw, which is just like a totally normal card, But I felt like this card is not good, and it kind of annoyed me when I played against it, because it's like this is a card you should really only play if you're really short on energy stuff, and people are just putting this card in their like red-green deck. And I don't know, for some reason it just bugged me. It's like, this isn't supposed to be good, but obviously sometimes it can still be fine. Right.
Having flying, means that if you don't have an answer, you're going to start getting clocked for 4, 3, or whatever in the air. Yeah. One of them, this just came up maybe only once, and maybe it just scarred me, but the creation of Avacyn.
Yeah, that's a tough card to lose to for sure.
It is, right? Because it's so bad. But if you are out of gas or not applying enough pressure, or you have a slow deck that's like drawing a bunch of cards or trying to do some kind of cute stuff, and somebody plays Creation of Avacyn and sets up, a decent, bomb or something like that, you're kind of watching these like arguably just bad for your opponent things happen turn after turn, but it does ultimately culminate, with something big happening. And I did lose to it, which is a little embarrassing. What was the bombiest bomb in the format? The one that you really wanted to get in your sealed pool or pack one, pick one it?
Oh, Guide of Souls. This card is just incredible. And
so stupid.
If you ever got one activation out of it, you just put the counter on the 2+ Muslim counters on the flying counter on a different creature. And it's just like, well, you can't lose now.
Totally.
Like they have 2 must-kill threats and it costs just 1 mana. Though, funnily enough, Ocelot Pride, also same exact casting cost, 1 white mana. That's another one which I think was almost as good. And obviously I'd be thrilled to open it anytime.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is the turn 1 Ocelot Pride beats you really quickly if you don't have an answer, whereas Guide of Souls takes a little time, but the turn 10 Guide of Souls is still a huge threat, whereas Ocelot Pride doesn't typically do that much.
Totally. Yeah. Guide of Souls to me is the scariest card in the format, and it does come down on the first turn, and it's very, very difficult to beat. You had Flage on here too?
Yeah, Flage is also very close.
Yeah.
Like, Flage is one of those cards where sometimes you would just like cast Flage on turn 3 to kill their 2 or 3 drop, depending who's on the play. And then you just like looked at them and that like they're just going to have to play a game of Magic against you. And then the card's going to come out of your graveyard for free and they're going to lose to it. Yep. Like that's just what's going to happen eventually. And not free because you have to pay mana, but like it doesn't cost you a card. It just comes back. And it's actually one of the roughest limited experiences I can imagine is just you're playing against Flage they have Flage and 2 other cards in their graveyard. And you just kind of have to play this game knowing that at some point Flage is going to come back and you probably are just going to die at that point.
Yeah. What were the best commons for each color for white?
White, Area Auxiliary. I don't think this one was even that close, honestly. Area Auxiliary is really good.
Second place on 17 lands is interesting. It was Mandibular Kite.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Mandibular Kite's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like Dog Umbra is also fine. Like there's a bunch of like mid-range white cards.
Yeah, this is wild. Yeah, I mean, do I have this sorted correctly? Like, wow. I would never have guessed this. This is the order. It's Area Auxiliary, Mandibular Kite, Thraben Charm, Solstice Zealot, Hexgold Slith, and then Dog Umbra.
Yeah, I mean, Thraben Charm is a pretty good removal spell, and I think Solstice Zealot is very good in the energy decks, so doesn't surprise me. Hexgold Slith I don't like very much. That's a card I typically tried not to play.
Yeah.
But
what about blue?
For blue, Serum Visionary is the best, but blue doesn't have any like really great commons. Like a lot of like I don't think you're happy taking a blue common in the first couple picks, basically.
No, you're right. The peak, Serum Visionary was a 58%, Demon Inferiors 58.3 for Serum Visionary, 58 for Demon Fear. But none of they're pretty, like the top chunk is all fine, but like you said, there's no standout for blue.
Yeah.
What about black?
Wither and Bloom beating Breathe Your Last and both just solid removal spells. I like it when in formats where removal's good. Like it's fun to be able to cast a removal spell to kill one of their things and have that be like a good play to make. I don't know. It just kind of feels natural.
It does. What about a Curse Marauder? Where
I would have a Curse Marauder. I mean, here's the thing about drafting black, and part of the reason Wither and Bloom and Breathe Your Last are so good is like every black deck is going to be pretty happy with these cards. So like you don't have to really know too much about what your deck's trying to do. You just take these cards, they'll be good. Mm-hmm. But then once you start looking at Dross Claw and Refurbished Familiar and a Curse Marauder, like Gravedigg, you look at some of these cards and you're trying to figure out, okay, what am I trying to do here? You have to know what your deck's goals are in order to accurately kind of rank these cards, because there's just so many different decks you can draft and synergies you can draft, and you have to have decks that are the cards that are kind of going with whatever theme you're looking for.
Totally. And this is a good, time to mention that this is where, if you are the type of person to just sort of blindly rely on 17 lands data, it is going to fall short for you in situations like this, because what you'll see is that the highest performing commons the ones that can kind of stand out are the ones that are good regardless of what deck they're in. But cards like many of the black cards, Wither and Bloom, it's just going to be good. But like a Curse Marauder goes into a certain deck, but it could definitely be picked over Wither and Bloom in the right deck, or the deck could
if it's
need
pack 3, you have 6 and a Chthonian Nightmare. Like, yeah, Curse Marauder is going to do way more for you. Like, it's not going to be close. And sometimes you'll take Refurbished Familiar over Breathe Your Last, and some decks would never do that. And that's one of the things I found cool about this format. There's just a lot of different ways to draft these decks. Yeah,
a good example, by the way, of kind of just always good and being at the top is the next one for red, which is Galvanic Discharge. Just awesome card. Well,
this card's priced to move. There's no no deck that's playing red that would not put this card in their deck. Like you don't. It kind of self-solves. It's just 1 mana deal 3. So yeah, it's better in energy, but it's not like you need this to be an energy deck for it to be good.
Yeah, and interestingly, Malevolent Rumble being the best green common is actually the same thing as well. I think I wouldn't have thought that when we first saw it, not just the power level stuff we talked about, but I would have thought it had more of a home, like it wanted to be an Eldrazi or something like that. And it turns out that Malevolent Rumble is just a raw power level card, and that's why you see it top of the green as well.
Yeah, and I think that green's also just so stacked in this set. Like you have Malevolent Rumble, you have Eldrazi Repurposer, Horrific Assault, like Nightshade Dryad. Like these are all cards I'm just pretty happy taking early. Nightshade Dryad, is like if you were to tell me that's your first pick, it's like, yeah, I would have hoped for a little better, but that wouldn't really make me unhappy.
That's right. And then interestingly, we don't normally do it, but of course the number one multicolored card was Writhing Chrysalis, but I also thought that it was kind of cool. Number 2 is Sneaky Snacker.
Yeah, Sneaky Snacker's cool.
Yeah, and that card has it needs to be built around, but it's powerful.
My one bone to pick with the format, I guess, is like, and maybe I'll get a chance to do it this weekend as I play in the Arena Open. Is I have not drafted the Sneaky Snacker deck as many times as I want to.
Same.
I just have. It's just hard to get into.
Yeah, my opponent. Pretty early in the format, I had an opponent play, what is it called? The Grave one that 2 and a black go dig up 3 creatures, the old card.
Yeah, Buried Alive.
Buried Alive. And they're like 3 Sneaky Snackers. And I'm like, I'm going to have an extremely hard time beating this. Like, this is really cool. I was like, props. And I'll tell you, when that happened to me, I thought it was a meme. I thought it was like this one person put together this one thing, but it's not true. If you can... You're a bit at the mercy of how many Sneaky Snackers get open, but like they do stack well, and those decks can play as many as you want, and it just performs. So I'm impressed. What was a mythic uncommon for this set? It's funny because the Writhing Chrysalis just seemed to dominate any single card non-rare discussion. To the point that
in most of the rares, yeah,
and most of the rares too. But what was a mythic uncommon for the set?
So. Amped Raptor and Path of Annihilation are kind of neck and neck in terms of like win rate. I would say that those two are certainly the 2 cards I was hoping to open like on at an uncommon level. They're very, very good.
Yeah. I mean, particularly Amped Raptor, like
Amped Raptor is the most busted. Like if
it has a 64% game win rate, like what?
Well, I mean, if you ever had the like turn 1 or turn 2 Amped Raptor into a 2-drop thing happen to you, like you know how good that is. But even more than that, if they went turn 1 Axe, the energy Axe for 1 red, turn 2 Amped Raptor hit a 3 or a 4-drop, like what are we even talking about?
What are we even talking about? Yeah, totally. Man, that isn't, you know what Amped Raptor's better than? Writhing Chrysalis. It's 0.1%, baby. Go Amped Raptor. You made it. It actually fell above that line somehow. I don't know if in a pack 1 pick 1 scenario I think I'd still take Chrysalis because it doesn't need any help. But yeah. What's the worst card in the set? The biggest blank, the most last picked.
The one that bugs me the most and is coincidentally one of the worst cards is GOT, the Moag Ancient. This is the blue-green rare that cares about how many times you cast it from the command zone or something like that. Yeah. Basically just like a card that doesn't function in non-commander Magic. So yeah.
It's a little face slappy, I would say. Like, are they going to make what I want to see now is I want to see a commander product that says like, if you pick this first overall in your draft, It's like, yeah, that's how it feels. And then I have to give a shout out to most last pick to the medallions. Just because of what I said. I get it that they need to be in, but for what we talked about before, where
I have the perfect card for begrudgingly playable, my specialty, Rose Cotton Knight.
It's so perfect. I saw it on there and I was like, oh, he did it again. It is so perfectly begrudgingly playable.
You're like, okay, I guess I've got enough artifacts and enchantments that this could be my last card.
I don't know, Luis. Like, you're good at a lot of things in life, and who knew that this was the thing you were actually best at? Picking begrudgingly. You know right where that line is, right? It's just unbelievable. He never misses. I love that.
The Foul Strike is another one which I think is actually even like a little better than that. Like, but it is one of the cards I found myself cutting fairly often.
Is there a card you're going to miss drafting?
Custodian Nightmare. I really like playing with it. It's a very fun kind of like sequence to do. Is just like, okay, how can I fill my graveyard and get value and get these creatures I can like have good ETBs, but also have to be cheap, or you can generate energy by looping the small creatures so you can loop something big. I just have had a really good time with it. Yeah,
it's a super cool card. I picked Royal Cartographer, the draw 3, if you can pay 6 energy one. It kind of hit a nice balance for me when I could pick that card up, maybe second or third pick or something like that.
Really fun card.
Yeah, just a fun one to throw the energy stuff at. A good build around card, and one that you could actually get your hands on and didn't require like too much craziness. What was the LSV-ist and the Martialist card?
For me, I've got Deep Analysis.
Nice.
You know what's great is you can spend 4 mana to cast a Divination to not advance the board, and then you can then spend another 2 mana and some life. You really done a good job of not only not advancing the board, but then paying a bunch of life. But at the end, you get a bunch of cards out of it. Yeah, in a set that already had good card draw, you just didn't need to do this stuff. This is very LSV territory for me. I've got kind of my brain and my heart here. My brain says Depth Defiler because it has kind of a mana war plus card draw / stuff going on, and I love those type of cards. But my heart is Breaker of Creation. Oh, yeah. I really like cards that give you this high bar to go to, but that, if you cast a Breaker of Creation, like, you are not dying, that turn or whatever. That turn, certainly. Right. And I know it's expensive at 8 mana, but it's somewhat difficult to kill. It's powerful. Yes, they made it so that it's not broken. It has only 4 toughness. So, a lot of times it's going to get blocked or something's going to happen. It's also not counterable, like the life gain effect. Right. So like totally. You're just so there's nothing more like a security blanket than knowing you're going to untap and cast Breaker of Creation. Exactly. Because like the worst case isn't that bad. And to me, like, what's that? I was going to say, what can go wrong? Yeah, just totally. Almost nothing. Right. And I really appreciate that design because, one aspect of game design as a player that I ask myself when I look at a card is I'm asking the card questions, right? And how many times does it tell me what I want to hear versus what I don't want to hear, right? And, some cards, it's just like, it's all good, right? Like, Malevolent Rumble is a good example, right? I'm asking it like, well, am I getting my mana's worth? Yeah. Well, how many cards do I get to see? Oh, this many. Well, what kind of cards can I get? Well, these type. Okay, that's actually pretty good. Well, wait a minute. Where are the cards? Where do they go when I'm done? Right? Yeah, it's like graveyard. Okay, yeah, right? I'm in. And other cards, though, like this one kind of split the difference a little bit. Right? It's 8 mana. I'm like, okay, well, I'm not super happy about that. But like, if I cast this card, can I realistically survive? And it's like, absolutely. It's going on the stack separate from the card. Doesn't care if it gets killed. Okay, well, that's great. And then it's like, well, is it easy to kill? No, it's actually got hexproof from each color. Is it a good like attacker? Yeah, it has Annihilator too. I'm like, okay. Lots of toughness? Only 4. It's like, all right, I can deal with this. This is a nice little balanced card and I really like cards that give me a goal in the game. Like, it helps me focus on one game plan. Luis is always saying have a plan. If you have a Breaker of Creation in your hand, you've got a plan. And I like that. What was my soapboxiest card? I mean, it was definitely Writhing Chrysalis. Like, we just had a couple of good, solid, what the hell rants about Chrysalis. And that is going to be the mark that this set leaves on us. What card do you still have to read when it's cast against you? So I have Ethereum Terramander as like one of my answers because do you off the top of your head know how much it adapts for and how much cheaper it gets? Does it count itself?
No, I would guess like 7 and then no, I don't remember.
Yeah, well, it is 7 and it doesn't count itself. And like, even at the Pro Tour, I had an opponent like not know how much their thing costs to adapt, you know? And it's a confusing thing. And then you had the kind of best answer here with Kirik, son of Yawgmoth. It's just like what on earth? It doesn't help also that like the card isn't really good, so you're not going to see it cast very often.
Yeah, and I mean, and we mentioned it before, but the Shadow of the Second Sun is definitely. I mean, it's weird because I do know what this card does, you know, because you told me in English what it does, but reading it, you don't. And my favorite part about it is the reminder text at the end, which doesn't help. Like it says the end step happens after the added untap, upkeep, and draw steps, but it doesn't address kind of the main thing, which is that there's an additional beginning phase, which is like, what is a beginning phase? Like I never have heard anybody say, I'd like to go to my beginning phase now, or I'm in my beginning phase, or the beginning phase just happened, or whatever. And that to me is the part where I think you kind of lose people, because people are definitely comfortable with untap, upkeep, draw, or beginning of combat, declare attackers. Like they can start to get their head around that. But this beginning phase after this phase thing really is an all-timer.
It's just not language we use when we're talking about Magic. Beginning phase is not words. It's kind of like you should strive to not put the stack on a card.
Right.
Well, beginning phase is also one of those things that like, I get it. This is a weirdo mythic, you know, or rare or whatever that they wanted to do something wild. But yeah, that's generally stuff. Words that no one would ever say as a Magic player or that are supposed to mean something are probably not words you're looking to put too frequently in a text box.
Yeah, I'm just glad I don't have to be the one to do this, because I get to be the podcaster that says this is confusing and I don't like it. And I don't have to suggest an alternative that would have been better, because I'm sure that the person who templated this was like, this sucks, but this is the way that we have to do this or whatever. And I'm just glad I don't have to be the one to try to sort it out, because it's so crazy how you can verbally explain to somebody what a card does, like if they never read it, versus what they have to put on there for rules stuff. Okay. Big questions here. From a design and development aspect, how did the set fare? How did the mechanics play out? What were some of the wins and some of the losses for MH3?
So I think that the biggest, the Eldrazi in the room has to be Writhing Chrysalis. Like, I do think that Chrysalis is not the only card where this is true, but because Eldrazi overall felt like it was a little bit pushed. If you removed Chrysalis, I think Eldrazi would have felt very strong, but maybe not like dominant to the degree it was, but it would still have a lot of the best cards. Mm-hmm. So I do think that you can't, it's kind of, Chrysalis isn't like the only thing, but it's kind of emblematic of it, which is the Eldrazi were too good, Chrysalis was too good. And that's a downside. Like that's not where you want to be when it comes to a Magic set. You would like your set to be a little more balanced, because it did push some cool stuff out, and it made a lot of the drafts feel samey. I think one of the big things you that we and a lot of our listeners are going to grade formats on is like, to some degree, it's like fatigue. How often, like, how much am I going to enjoy this when I see the 7th Writhing Chrysalis cast against me in 5 rounds or whatever? Mm-hmm. And I think that it is worth trying to factor that in and trying to understand, like, okay, how repeatable or how fun is it to continue playing this? Like, what would make it more or less fun, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And I think that Writhing Chrysalis definitely contributed to that. Like that, mm-hmm. It's a tough one to play a ton of. So I think Writhing Chrysalis is certainly a downside, but the format overall, I think, was still quite good. Like,
do you attribute the stuff you said about Writhing Chrysalis to Eldrazi as a whole?
Well, yes and no. Like, yes, I think Eldrazi was a bit too good, and it made it so like you would be beaten by the same cards a lot in the same way. Eldrazi is not a particularly deep play pattern. Mm-hmm. There was like a little bit of 2 decks where there's like, oh, there's the red-green aggro, go wide, tokens, Titan's Vanguard deck, or a Void Pouncer. And then there's like Simic Ramp Eldrazi. But in reality, it was just Teamer Ramp Eldrazi, and sometimes they had a slightly more aggressive draw. But that really, I didn't feel like they felt meaningfully different. overall.
Mm-hmm.
So, Eldrazi was too pushed, but I think it's still like there were still ways to beat it. It wasn't the end of the world. And one thing that I think is kind of a negative is had I played this format for a week and then stopped, I would have had a kind of negative view. I mentioned this on the show that like my first experience was like, whoa, this is just all about Writhing Chrysalis. And that's like, I'm still getting past these 5th pick. I just draft Eldrazi every single time. And, it's getting old. But that's not really how it ended up playing out. And I really did end up enjoying the format a lot because there's a bunch of other good mechanics. Energy is a good mechanic. Energy is parasitic. It's linear. Like it only operates within itself. But that's fine. You can still do that. Like you're not, you're not barred from doing that. And I think that the energy mechanic worked out fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of end up where the more you go into it, the less you care about things that are outside it. But the energy decks are fun to play, and they were well designed. Design is a craft, and there's some artistry to it. If you make a mechanic that has a lot of really fun cards in it, it's going to do well. And Energy had a lot of really fun cards in it. I think Energy was really well executed. Design, it's both idea and execution. And if you fumble idea, it's going to be hard to have good execution.
Mm-hmm.
But if you fumble on the execution, which I think Writhing Chrysalis is an example of, like the development should not have released it the way it looks, like play design, whoever, the last step in the process who's trying to look at how much things should cost, how big they should be.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely this was not the way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But Energy, I think, really got there. And even though it was parasitic, as long as you do some non-parasitic ones, you'll be fine. And they did do that because, as we're going to talk about in a second here, all the other mechanics, I think, had a pretty good amount of like, oh, this overlaps nicely with, these other kinds of cards. And there's a little bit of like flexibility here. The thing they're always aiming for and don't always get to,
Yeah, for sure.
So
what were some of those things? Like what were the other hits for you, archetypically speaking?
So I really like how black was handled in this set. I feel like there's a bunch of different black decks, and they all overlap in various ways, but that your card needs are very different and your pick orders are different. And I think there's a lot of depth to that and a lot of interesting, varied gameplay. And really, I think, one of the things that would separate like the good MH3 drafters from the great ones is like knowing when you wanted Draw's Claw versus a Curse Marauder versus Wither and Bloom. You usually take Wither and Bloom over Draw's Claw, but sometimes you would want the other one, or like Refurbished Familiar is even a better example, because sometimes you would definitely take that over Wither and Bloom, and like knowing which black decks you were getting into and like kind of what the different strengths were there. Like I think that overall black was one of the best executions of a color I have seen in quite some time. Like it is just really fun to be able to draft it in that way. And there's just so many things you can do. So I really like the way that played out. And I thought like +1/+1 counters actually got pulled off for the first time. Sack, graveyard stuff. There's bridge cards. There's cards that worked in multiple. There's cards that all of them wanted. Like Wither and Bloom is a great removal spell everyone wants, but has additional value in your +1/+1 counter deck. I'm like, that kind of stuff is cool. Like,
yeah, those overlaps
really
are nice. Yeah.
It really plays into kind of what you're looking for. And I think that overall, I thought that this set was very good at kind of bringing all of that stuff together. The artifact theme was also really cool, and that was part of this. It was obviously heavy in black. Mm-hmm. I do think that putting Meltdown in the set was a mistake. Like, so Meltdown is like, red X, sorcery, destroy all artifacts that cost X or less. Basically, it was Plague Wind against the artifact deck. It just straight up was like, all right, well, it kills all your stuff. And yeah, I just don't see why they put such an effective hate card against one of the decks in the set. It's just really weird.
And it's a difficult deck to put together and not one of the stronger ones necessarily. So it was not the one we needed to keep in check.
Like Consign to Oblivion or whatever, the blue counter target activator triggered ability with Replicate, the anti-Eldrazi card. That was great because, first of all, it's not nearly as devastating as Meltdown, and it fights against the best deck. It all felt like kind of fine. Like I think that card was an upside to have, but Meltdown just felt like so punitive. It's like, yeah, you're just gonna You're playing the artifact deck. Well, you're just about to get crushed by the meltdown someone got, and we actually had meltdown very high in our pick order. If you were drafting artifacts, you have to
you have to steal
take
it.
Meltdown.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's crazy. And there's like an overarching lesson here too, right? About formats adjusting, right? About the self-adjusting nature of draft, that type of thing. Based on what you said about week one, if you had stopped then, you would have a different view on this format than now. And that leads us to, what did this format teach you? What were some of the takeaways for you?
Well, one is that first impressions aren't everything. I thought it was pretty good to really explore the depth of the format and get a lot happier with it. Another is that synergy is just, when done well, can be a really, really enthralling draft experience. I felt that this set rewarded. It had a combination of like, drafting Eldrazi is not that hard. You just take the best Eldrazi out of every pack, pretty much. Make sure you have enough mana accelerators. Drafting energy is not that hard. Even though it's a high synergy deck, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a hard deck to draft. You just take the best card that says energy out of every pack. That really is all you did. But overall, like, drafting the black decks, I thought was pretty interesting. There's a lot to be done there, and knowing when to pick the lands was challenging. So it was a set that had a mix of like some pretty on rails archetypes that I think is good to have for people who maybe don't draft as often, or aren't going to do 20 drafts, 50 drafts, but also had a lot of great stuff for people who wanted to do a bunch. Like, I saw BK the other day go off with Metastatic Evangel and Primal Prayers. Do you know what those cards do? So it's 3/1 that makes that proliferates whenever a non-token creature enters. And Primal Prayers is the 2 green like Allurin card that lets you pay an energy to play a cheap creature. And if you have a Shrieking Drake, you can keep playing Shrieking Drake and proliferating.
So he's the Shrieking Drake guy? He's the one?
Yeah. So he's doing stuff like that. And
that's amazing. That's really cool.
It was really cool. There's just so much that you could do in this set, and it's been really fun kind of discovering all of that. And I think that overall, like, the set, I don't know, it did a pretty good job of like bringing all those things together, even if Eldrazi was too good. It also shows how resilient Magic sets are. One thing really can't ruin most sets. And, I think like Writhing Chrysalis, having a common be like this, like Inspiring Overseer is another example. Yeah, that's about as bad as it gets. Like, you really don't want to have that be the case. But it takes more than that to ruin a set if the rest of the stuff that's going on is good. The problem is when you have something like Lost Caverns of Ixalan, where I kind of think it wasn't that great to begin with, and it had a bunch of issues. It ended up being like, it just felt like tons of 1-drops, and that was a lot of what was going on, that sort of thing.
Yeah. One of the takeaways I had from MH3 specifically was just a little bigger picture, was just regards to the fact that we didn't have it for that long. It does feel like it's being kind of rushed out the door, and I don't feel like I'm quite done with it, because this is one of those sets that we wait for, right? This is MH3. These are the ones where they go really deep. They don't worry about trying to accommodate for new players. They say, this is for the old school vets. We're going to take the lid off here, and you can kind of go nuts and give us that type of depth to find those weird combos like the one that you just mentioned. And it's been well established that a big chunk of the player base is a little disillusioned with how many products or how many sets come out in a year. And I think this is casualty of it's a little strong of a word. We still got some time with it and stuff, but I do feel like I wanted a little more. I'm not quite done with this, and I will play it until I can't anymore, but I probably could have used another month, honestly, to keep trying out and start finding more of that stuff. Part of that's personal to me, because I did find myself in a little bit of a rut, like I said, kind of drafting, some combination of Eldrazi or energy most of the time. And that's on me, that there's other stuff to do here. I kind of just fell into that pattern, but at the same time, like, I wouldn't mind a little more time to kind of find my way out of it. And we're not really going to get it, and that's a little bit of a bummer. And I think it is a bit of a knock on how many sets come out and how quickly they do. What grade would you give it?
Honestly, I would give this set an A-. I think it's very good. I've drafted it a lot. I think there's a lot going on. I wouldn't argue with someone who's like, I just had a bunch of people cast Writhing Chrysalis
Mhm.
against me, but if you play draft, it's balanced out a lot. You just don't play against the people who have 3 anymore because they just don't get past those.
Right.
Sealed, that's another issue entirely. But
Yeah.
for draft, I think there's a lot you can explore and a lot that's fun. And overall, I just think it works out pretty nicely.
Yeah, I gave it a B plus. I agree with everything you said. I'm taking away points for Chrysalis. I'm also taking away points for, there being 2 archetypes that really like stood head and shoulders above the rest, and then really having to work hard to find the other ones. I think that there should have been, or ideally there would have been, say 2 or maybe even 3 more archetypes that were more defined and more easy to see, that really stood out as like, we're going to do this. And they made their choice, and it's okay. I don't think it was wrong or bad. I just would prefer a little bit more action in that way. The choice that they made was, we're going to put Eldrazi in this set, and they're going to be represented across 3 colors. And we're going to put energy in this set, and we're going to do the same thing. And there are just, for a set that has 40 or 70 or whatever it was, different mechanics in it, things that care about Eldrazi, like Eldrazi Spawn or Devoid or whatever, come up disproportionately high compared to all the rest, and same things that make or care about energy. And again, that's okay. You probably have to plant your flag somewhere if you want anything to get resonant out of a crowd of mechanics and colors like that you have in a set like this. But for me, I wouldn't have minded it to be that when we got to this point, we said, okay, well, there's obviously Eldrazi and this, but also, Black-Green Graveyard was awesome, or Blue-Black draw 3 cards was amazing. Like that was a set that archetype that maybe didn't come up as much, but you really, really want it. And instead, you and me are both saying, like, I wish I could have drafted that deck at least a few more times, or a few times at all in some cases, because it is there. I've played against it. It's the number's just a little too small. So I would have preferred that there was a little bit more signposty kind of stuff available at that level too. And then the other knock that has it, I gave it a B plus. This is still quite a good grade, but are the slots that didn't seem to matter. They really did feel like they added up a lot, that were encroaching on the space where it could have been quite valuable to have some more really cool rares or really interesting things, or more build-arounds, or more stuff that supported another archetype. But when we took the number of cards that were just effectively straight up unplayable, unseen, nobody ever cast them, nobody cared about them, to me that number did get a little bit high for a set like this. So B plus for me. What was your favorite card in the format?
Oh, Chthonian Nightmare.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed playing with that card. Recurring Nightmare is a fun card, and this is a 2-mana Recurring Nightmare. Like, sign me up.
Did you know that I picked one Chthonian Nightmare in the first draft I did with no knowledge of the format?
That's sweet.
But then somebody passed me a
card.
Wumpus, and I decided to do a self-imposed must take all Wumpai rule, and so I didn't end up playing the Nightmare.
That's kind of what I did at the PT, actually.
Yeah, you knew what you were doing, though. I hadn't read the set yet. My favorite card in the format is like so not close. One of my favorite cards in recent memory was Null Drifter. The only sad part about it is that it's a straight up rare, so you just don't see it very much, and it was very good. But yeah. Null Drifter, I feel like they made it for me. I love the artwork. I would have picked it for best artwork, but I wanted to kind of mix it up. I didn't want it to be my favorite card that I wanted to open that was the best thing and it had the best, so I picked it. But
it's okay. You can just enjoy Null Drifter. No one's going to judge you.
Okay, thank you for embracing me. And that's it. That's going to do it for Modern Horizons 3. I always look forward to these type of sets, Luis. Like, these are the ones that have chances to be all timers. This one is one I would happily redraft in the future, by the way, which is about the biggest compliment I can give, because honestly, that's not normally the case. If you said, hey, do you want to draft and just pick from some set from the last 3 years, I'd probably just not. I'd just draft whatever's out right now, because I don't really like bouncing around. I like kind of going deep. But if in a year, if you said, hey, MH3 is coming out on Arena again, I'd be like, sweet, like I'll do it. Yeah, I'd have the knee-jerk reaction of, oh, the Writhing Chrysalis set, but it's good set. Like this set passed many of the bars with the nitpicks that we have or the complaints that we have about it. It's still a really good set, and I would certainly want to draft it. Any last thoughts, Luis, before we head out?
A lot of exciting stuff to play if you're a limited player who wants to play in like kind of like high stakes online events. You got the Arena Open this weekend and every month basically, and this whole cube gauntlet. So really cool stuff. This is kind of what a lot of us have hoped for. So it's cool seeing it kind of exist here and be real. Also,
if you're interested in any other high stakes events, you can hit up Luis LSV on Twitter and pretty much everywhere else. My name is Marshall _LR everywhere. You can find everything related to the podcast at lrcast.com. We want to thank our sponsor, Ultimate Guard, for their support of the show. Again, link in the show notes to that sweet cube tournament that we talked about at the beginning of the show. And thanks to everybody who supports us on Patreon. That's going to do it for this one. We'll see you next week where we will have the set review for Boom Burrow. So don't go anywhere. We'll see you there.
So I'm going to use my time on, our podcast to brag about myself. Just bear with me here.
Let her rip, buddy. I'm here for it.
I know you already know this because I immediately messaged you and Paul, but MTG Elo Project, Adam, he tweeted out that he had, they had a stat, which was like the longest streak. And he actually posted, and the longest streak of wins at a pro level event. So we're talking Pro Tour or Worlds, basically. And I'm currently the person with the number one streak, 19 match wins in a row. Mm-hmm. Do you know who number two is? Well, I guess you actually do. But
I
number two is also me. 18 wins in a row, a different streak. And I just saw that. It's like, look, I don't need the ego boost. Like, clearly, I'm very confident that I'm good at Magic, and I'm not really worried about that. Mm-hmm. But it is just like, I don't know. I find it to be kind of thrilling to be like, oh man, that is pretty cool. That's a cool stat, and it really did make me kind of, kind of brighten my day there. The next highest is actually there's a bunch of people on 15 wins in a row, but I have them all by 3 and 4.
Yeah, that was the thing that really stood out to me when you sent that to me. I was like, you have the next, like your two are gapping the next two by a lot. Like, especially if you run the numbers on that, like even if it's 50-50, getting those last 3 in a row makes it very, very difficult. By the way, this brings up another, while we're bragging about Luis, TCG player put out that thing, James, right?
Yeah, the flashback about the 16 video in San Diego.
So I'll put a link in the show notes to that. I really enjoyed it. And it for those of you, especially newer listeners or who haven't followed Luis's PT career as much, it documents the greatest run in the history of the Pro Tour, basically at an individual Pro Tour where Luis won 16 matches in a row. And that makes up 16 of the, what was it? You said it was 19 for your number one streak,
yeah,
right?
I had won my last 3 rounds at Worlds, it looks like. Mm-hmm. And then my first, or last 2 rounds at Worlds and then 17 at San Diego.
Yeah, 16. He went undefeated in Swiss and then made it into the semifinals as well. And so, yeah, I'll put a link to that as it's really cool. Just it's a little piece of history at this point, and it can let you know a little bit more about your second favorite LR co-host.
Though, funnily enough, Matt Nass and Sam Pardee were talking about another stat today, which is there are 2 people who have top 8'd a PT in every continent where Pro Tours have been held.
Oh, and really?
That means you have to top 8 one in Europe, Asia, Australia, and the United States. Sam Pardee is one of those people, and I'm actually the only other person. So me and Sam, who had dinner together last night, I made baked potatoes for everyone. Wow. We're the only 2 people for this kind of made up Matt Nass stat, but it's a cool stat. Basically, there's only 16 people who could because there's only been 2 Pro Tours in Australia. So you had to top 8 Sydney or with Worlds 2002. Me and Sam both top 8 at Sydney, and now with his top 8 in Amsterdam, he now has top 8 on every continent.
Incredible.
All right, that'll be enough bragging. I'll lay off for now. But look, it was a good week for my ego. Let's just put it that way.